Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with Coralogix for our office hours session this week. This is an interactive session, so I'll be going through the Coralogix platform and highlighting a few features, and any questions that come up that you see as we go along, feel free to put them in the question and answer session on Zoom, and we will get those answered for you, ideally as we go along. So I'll ask for some help from the moderator if I possibly don't see the question right away, and we will go from there. But this session is for you today, so please, any questions that come up, put them in the chat in the Q&A area, and we will get those answered for you as quickly as possible. So here we are in the Coralogix platform, and this may look like some other tools that you use today, and that's great. We certainly want it to be as user-friendly as possible. I want to highlight a few things that you don't see just by looking at the screen. That has to do with the architecture of the Coralogix platform. So, I've been doing IT monitoring for many years, and I've always had to let data come in from other sources, from the servers and the network equipment and the end users, all sorts of items that are out there in my infrastructure. And then that all has to go somewhere. I have to store it. Maybe it's a database, maybe it's a NoSQL structure, maybe it's just a large directory of zipped up files, but it all has to be what's typically called indexed. So it has to sit in there, and then we begin the analysis of that. So those are typically queries that are run against that data that's been stored from all those devices. And very powerful. I've had a lot of success with exactly that architecture. But today we're going to talk about something that's newer and even better, because what we can do now is, instead of waiting for all that data to be stored or indexed somewhere and then analyzed, what we're looking at here is we are actually analyzing the data as it's coming into the platform. We are a SaaS solution. We do run in the cloud. We were built from day one as a cloud native application. So what that means for you is that you can send, we have a lot of customers just sending a few megabytes every day and getting a lot of value out of what they're seeing with that data. But we also have customers that are sending petabytes of information, and we're able to handle that extremely easily because of the cloud architecture and our ability to scale out immediately. That elasticity of the solution gives you all the processing power and all the capabilities, no matter what level of data is actually coming into the system. So you immediately go through all that data. And what Coralogix does different is that we're analyzing that on the front end. As it's being ingested, you are looking for those logs, how they're coming across, what they look like, what's inside of those logs, and how about any alerting that needs to happen. So now, instead of searching data that's been stored and indexed, we're doing this as it's being ingested. So several benefits to that. Probably the most important is, and we'll look at this in just a minute, I see that error condition or that alert condition as the data is coming in. It's coming into the platform, and literally that millisecond, I know that alert has been raised. Either the email goes out, or I have it hooked into my ServiceNow or my PagerDuty, maybe a Slack message. That's going to happen right then. And because I'm doing that on the front end as the data is being ingested, I don't have the competition for the processing power as I'm searching my logs, looking through all the data that has been ingested. I can do all of that and get extremely fast query responses because I'm not competing with all the alert queries that are also running. Now, also unique to the Coralogix platform is this ability to bring out anomalies. So what is different in the system than what we normally see? So with about a week's worth of data, we can develop the baselines, the patterns of behavior, those things that are most important for your systems. And with that pattern, with that baseline that we see across your systems, now when something is happening that deviates from that standard behavior, we're going to raise that. You're going to see that as an anomaly in your systems. Again, most important there, you don't have to do anything for that to happen. As soon as you start sending the data into the Coralogix platform, we're going to baseline that information. And then as we see deviations from that, anomalies will be raised, and you will see those. And a lot of those, we call them the search insights that we see down the left-hand side here. And then we also see the logs. So today, I'm a network administrator. I'm working with a gaming company, and we're actually going to have something today that needs our attention. So we're going to take a look at this. And we see here that when I look at my top 3 errors, that within my Wind Creek system, I do have an unknown error from the API. We're also seeing 363 system here. What do we have to do with that? And here we also have from this IP, what is the problem with the null reference exception that I'm seeing with with this authentication request. All very important. I could go directly to those, but let's step back for a second. And as I said, we need to actually figure out what's going on. We have something within our system needs our attention. We possibly have a slowdown or maybe even an outage. And as I mentioned, we can actually work with the data as it's being ingested into the environment. What that means for you is we go ahead and we click on live tail. So kind of like you would expect, and I'm sure we've all tailed a file before that we've had to take a look at. But now, instead of having to go out to all those different boxes, log in, get to the right directory, make sure the file exists, then tail the file and try and dig through that to see, hey, is this information actually there? All I have to do is click on the start button. And I'm immediately looking at those systems, and I'm seeing the data coming into the environment. Now, this would probably be a little difficult to do anything really productive with, just to look at this. Sometimes can be interesting, but we're going to break this down. So I know that it's my last casino system is what's most important there. So that is the subsystem we're going to take a look at. And then just to keep it simple here, we will search for error in our environment. And so here we go. And I see that here. So I've got the error message here on my last casino system like I expected. And I'm going to go ahead and copy out the machine that's being affected by that. So let's go ahead and get that information. So think about how you may have to do that today and what it takes to get down to, hey, where exactly is this error coming from? In this case, it appears to be a Windows machine. Notice I've got Akamai equipment here, in other pieces, many different log files and information that's coming through at any time, but that ability to go to exactly the system that's most important, putting in just a simple text search to see what I need, and get to the data that's most important. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the logs area. So now we've moved past where that data is being ingested. And now here's the data we have indexed, the data that we are looking at. So within here, I have all sorts of systems. We'll go ahead and select all the systems and select all the applications. So we're seeing everything within systems here. And I see a wide range of information. If I have a spike here or something that's happening at a certain time, I can drill down to just that area to start to see what's happening there. Maybe I'm only really interested in my debug logs. There's that error message. So we take a look and say, okay, there's something definitely going on there. And what would I do with that information at this point? So I can go ahead and maybe it's taking a look at either the raw information. Many times I can just see that on the screen that I'm looking at, or do I just want to see what's happening in the system around that time? So 5 seconds before, 5 seconds after, it looks like a lot of info screens. I'm not seeing any more errors around there. So at this point, so go ahead and let's say we want to search on the ID for that machine. I've got this narrowed down to just this error that I'm looking at this point. So, in a lot of situations, just seeing this error message, being able to look at the log file that we have right here is going to tell us, okay, I see that, yep, this has already ended. I've got a problem here. The end spin data error, depending on your knowledge of the systems and looking at the log files. But many, many times, this will solve the problem immediately, that I can see the log file, see what's going on, and fantastic. Get in touch with the correct person, make a change, or maybe this is something I want to be alerted on. We'll take a look at that in just a second. So let me go ahead and we're going to go back and select all the systems and subsystems again. Wanted to show a few other capabilities within here. We'll go ahead and get all the logs back into the system here. So notice that we have a large number of logs, but only a much smaller number of templates. So when we look across the systems that are coming, as I mentioned, on that ingest, we are putting together templates for all the logs that are being passed in. Now, you don't have to do any work for that to happen. What we do is we literally analyze and determine from these logs, here's what we see. And certainly a lot of these make sense, a city and continent. But we start to break this out into how this kind of what would be the information that you would need from that. So a couple of really nice pieces of information that come from that. If we look at, let's get one with a little more information here. We see the occurrences for that. And it's only a couple of those today. So it certainly displays much better with thousands of instances. So, but the most important thing for you, and that as we work through the data, is that we build those templates out as the data is coming into the systems. And think about, like, if you remember the old zip algorithms, and anything that's constant within the files, we don't need to store that every single time. But those variable fields, so high cardinality data, not a problem at all, bringing that in and then being able to store that in a very compact form. But then that also allows for extremely fast searching that you're able to do. So let's go back to what we were trying to find before. Here was that machine that where we saw the error when we were looking at the live tail. And go ahead and we bring that back. So we have several, let's go back to the log files. So we can see the ones associated with that. And again, so here's all that information. If we remember about that, we do see a debug one here, but we wanted that error associated with that. So we'll just tack on a and error to that and go ahead and bring that up. And there's the exact file. This is exactly what we were looking at. Again, thousands and thousands and thousands of logs and pieces of information that are being ingested, but we can quickly get to exactly the one that's giving us possibly the problem or what exactly is going on here. We can go ahead and create an alert. And this is probably the most common scenario where there's an outage, something's going on. I'm getting a call from users, maybe part of the business, this isn't working correctly. That ability to quickly go through the data, take a look at it, see, okay, what exactly is going on here? And then being able to not only do something that you're seeing, and keep in mind how much of this is completely automatic, that we didn't have to, all we had to do was start sending the data into Coralogix, and we immediately have this level of searching and analysis capabilities at our fingertips here. But now this isn't, I don't want the business to call me about this. My goal here is to be proactive. So I do want to put an alert together whenever I see this situation, when this either starts to develop or when it actually has happened. I want to know about it before anybody has actually called me. You can go ahead and click on Create Alert. So this brings up the alert information and many types of alerts that we have. And, we've talked about real time at several points up to now, where that data that's being ingested into Coralogix, that's when we're working on it. So this really does give you, proactive capabilities, but we're also taking advantage of that machine learning that I talked about earlier. So how can we take, we have the algorithms in there, we have the capability, we take that machine learning capability and let's apply that to put together some really nice granular alerting that we would have in the system. So if we took a look at, let's call this our standard alert. And this is probably the one we've all used for years and years and years, where we say, okay, when we're either see this value or this value goes above this level, or I'm between this percentage and this percentage, that's going to go ahead and let's alert on that. So in this case, I did have my search query. It automatically brought over all the applications and subsystems that we're working with. But notice that I have a really unique feature here. I've certainly never had this capability before. When we say, I want to be alerted when we are more than usual. So Corelogix in the background, you don't have to do anything. It's going to constantly be creating that baseline that makes sense that we see for this level. Okay. So if we see something that goes above that's more than usual, and then how many times, if it's just 2 or 5 times, then go ahead and let us know, okay, that's excellent. That's when the alert actually fires. And then what do I do with that? So the standard email that we would expect to have, but then also the webhook. So tying this into ServiceNow, Slack, PagerDuty, whatever would make the most sense. And you can certainly schedule these. I know everyone has maintenance windows and we want to be aware of that. So, but let's see, what are some of those other capabilities that we might have? And keep in mind, all of these are happening in real time. These dynamic alerts that we're looking at, I mean, this really does enable you to detect that abnormal behavior automatically. So you don't have to set fixed threshold values. We are going to take advantage of that machine learning that's always going on and use that to our advantage. More and more, we see this, eliminating, definitely reducing the alert fatigue. So many of us have to deal with many times on a daily basis. So what about like a ratio alert? What if you could, very quickly calculate a ratio between 2 queries, maybe your app servers and your web servers. And then if that reaches a set threshold, then I'm going to go ahead and trigger alert. Huge advantage there. Many systems will move in tandem as activity rises. If I'm doing more shopping is going on the website, that's good. I want that to happen. But just because we go over one fixed number, that may not be a bad thing. If it's a Black Friday type situation or something where it's good news for the business that we're having all of this activity happen. And so as activity increases, we would see those queries move in tandem with each other. But if that ratio between them starts to change, that's when we may need to, something may need our attention. So, I'm thinking of one of our customers. It's a marketing firm. They monitor the ratio traffic from specific regions to overall traffic from, basically across the globe. So after a regional campaign, they can quickly see, hey, are we having an effect here? A much simpler way to do it, maybe just use zip codes and push out the new campaign and see what zip codes are being affected by that. So there are excellent capabilities there. I know security teams use this heavily. If you think about your denied request, maybe very specific admin operations, if you possibly requests that are originating maybe from a block network domain, compare those to all of your requests. And if I'm seeing a ratio that's much different than what I normally see, that's when I want to get alerted on that. So new value, this one is, I've definitely never had this capability before, because we're tracking all that data, and we'll talk more about this, but if you can think of maintaining state as we're tracking the data as it's being ingested, this allows us to pick a field. So as I go ahead and within that new value, it's going to ask me which key do I want to track in here. So maybe it's my user ID that's most important. If I see new user IDs being come in or being attempted, I would want to get notified on those. And what we will actually do, I should have shown that, you can set this up for up to 3 months. As I'd say, most common is 48 or 72 hours, but go ahead and pick that field that's critical that you want to keep track of. And Coralogix will build up a table of information for all the values that come in that field. Then after that 48, 72, whatever you chose, now the alert will come for any new values that are in that field. So just pick the time frame that's going to get 98, 90%, 99% of the values that typically come across in there. And now we will see that. So, when we looked at that error condition earlier, we can go ahead and say, hey, for that machine, here's what we typically see for, in that case, it was that 363 error that came in there. If we rarely ever see that, possibly that's what we want to get alerted on. I'm thinking also we had a customer and they're monitoring all their IP addresses, going to, let's say, something pretty critical like a VPN access. Now, when you see a new IP trying to access that, that's what I want to see. Let me know. Let me check it out. See if that's valid or if that's something I need to block. Maybe, look at your code, and I want to be triggered if there's a new application error code. So when you look, depending on how you send your error codes, but very common to simply send an error code field, and now go ahead and keep track of those. And every time I see a new error code, is that something, a problem with the release that we need to take a look at and adjust? Or if it's just something that, we have a new capability, so we have some new error codes. But in either case, as someone who's monitoring the network, as someone who's in charge of everything that's going on out there, I want to know that. I want to see those values, and I want to be able to take a look and figure out, hey, do I need to set an alert or something when I see that new value that was not there before? Extremely difficult to do just out of the box or without any, to try and go back and talk to the developers. And here's all the error codes we typically send. So much easier to let the Coralogix platform do the work, log all the possible values, and then let you know about anything that new that comes across. So, we're all seeing these data volumes just go through the roof, and along with those data volumes, the number of alerts, when we think of the logs, the metrics, the security systems, and it absolutely is exponentially increasing. But one of the most powerful indicators of the importance of an alert is that number of elements. So think of all those things in your environment that are affected by that alert. So, maybe it's the number of users affected by a 500 error. They might possibly be, we talked about it, accessing VPN or maybe calling an API. A little more granular, maybe the number of Kafka consumer groups that are returning errors. So many things that when I'm seeing a unique count. So when these values, that's just another way to say this, the number of unique values inside a selected key, and then we're going to match that to a specific search criteria. So back to, we talked about cardinality earlier. This is going to be, this very easily could be tied to the cardinality of a specific key, and matching that to the search. This is going to allow us to put together that unique count alert for users. So what would be another example? Maybe customers, that if you needed to track 400 errors, or maybe specifically 404 errors, but then you also wanted to group that by the number of URLs and clients that are affected by that 404 error. And so this allows you to do that, something that would have been very difficult to do in most tools that I've used. And maybe think about time relative. This is going to be triggered when, again, we're talking about that ratio. If that reaches a set threshold compared to a past time frame. So now you can start to detect abnormal behavior within your system. So when I see, we can still use the same query, but now when I look at, is this compared to the same hour yesterday or last week, or the same day last week or last month? Think about this. Maybe this would be triggered when there's more errors than yesterday. So we're going in the wrong direction. If we look at error rates, between each day, automatically we can start to see that, hey, we're increasing, and that, we need to look at that. So maybe delays in page load time, and we could track that by hour. So if we see that increasing 1 hour after the next, well, why is that? So what's going on within our systems? So we can go ahead and start to look at our web applications, and does something need to be adjusted or changed here? Possibly our security folks, if you think about domain name responses, and how are those very specific domains or ones that are of critical importance, are we seeing more activity than we saw? Or maybe like if we get to twice the number of admin logins, okay, something is definitely not correct there. That should stay pretty standard across the hours and the days that were involved here. So again, that's a pattern of behavior. It could be a condition that I need to take a look at. Again, maybe look at on the business side when I see purchase history. So the same number of purchases, in fact, this would be like if I'm seeing going the other direction, if I see a lot less purchasing going on in this hour compared to last hour, or maybe it makes that one make the most sense to compare the weeks or the months. And as I see those trending in the wrong direction, now, okay, did something change? What are we looking at? Do I need to adjust a campaign? Whatever it might be. So tremendous power within the alerts there that I've certainly never had before, but this does allow those very specific conditions. And then hopefully on our office hour extremely soon, within the next couple of weeks, we'll have this metric turned on, and we'll look at tying those metrics into the alerts. So not only have we triggered that alert condition, but looking at the metrics of the various systems within our environment, have they reached a threshold, or are they at a level when combined with what I'm seeing through my queries or these other alerts that require an alert to be triggered? So most importantly, you're seeing the information first, you're getting it before users or customers are calling in, and that they're very specific. They truly are an alert, and they truly are something that demand and require your attention. We'll go ahead and discard that. So now we're going to go back to the dashboard. We've been talking about the insights, those capabilities that Coralogix has built in. I'm going to take a look at when I see these anomalies, and I see some information that here it's telling me that a flow anomaly was detected. So I'm seeing 2 log templates here. They usually arrive together at a certain ratio per minute, but at this, so 2 times, as we looked at those log templates earlier, we're seeing that this ratio was actually broken. So again, that where we typically see log volumes that from these systems, now we're seeing that's different. Something has happened here that I'm not seeing what I typically see from these systems. Now we're automatically going to bring the most important information to front and center there. So here we have an info log that 6 times went below the range. And keep in mind, we've been baselining these systems, so we know what's normally expected. And then we also have a log here 6 times above the range. So something is going on here that these are different. These are behaving differently than we normally see. So that brings that front and center for you. And then we're also going to bring out these suspected errors. So we have several log files here where we understand the log. We know what it normally looks like, but we're seeing different behavior than what we normally do. You know, this one here, way above normal, 700%, 600%, 600%, 125%. So much different volumes than we normally see within these systems. Those are being brought front and center for you. And you can click on those, go directly into the logs, start to take a look what actually happened here. So, and then, okay, independent of what's different in the system, what am I looking at? Just my top error logs across the system. So I am seeing that error log. This looks similar to what we saw before, but the information there, we've got that API response error. It seems like we've been seeing that over and over again. We see that in the second top error log as well. And as we go down a little bit, there's some information there with an IP. And so, okay, what exactly happened there? And notice that these are all, most of these are that last casino system that I was looking at before. Now there's no newly introduced logs here. So that's, sometimes that's nice that I don't have to look at that, but other times that will take me directly to the error that's really causing most of the issues, because this is new. This we have not seen before. So this is where, when we talked about the alerts before, and when you just define those static alerts, that's, you know, trying to define, hey, what happened here? What really caused the problem? That ability to identify that moment when things went wrong. Okay, how exactly do I do that? And with just what I'll say, just a kind of the threshold-based alerting, that becomes very, very difficult. Those are generally called static alerts. So we looked at the dynamic alerts that Coralogix can do and the extreme power that you have with that dynamic alerting capability. But that's going to be very, I'm sorry, you need that so that you can allow for those traffic spikes, you know, those things that in the past would cause a lot of false positive alerts that then can make you miss real events that have happened. So as we look at something that actually has learned the ratio of, let's say, the error logs, bad API responses across the services, the environments, the different components, and also that this is constantly running. This is always going. So different hours of the day, different days of the week, that's all going to be accounted for here. So now when you do see something like this, where this is different, what caused this to happen here? And, you know, we'll investigate and find that. But almost always when something's different, something's happening, something is, you know, business users are going to be calling, customers are going to be calling. This is where I need to know that. So I'm going to see that, okay, we're out of what we normally see here. That's being brought to my attention immediately. So that's the real power, where just by sending the logs in, that's all I had to do. No extra work required. And Coralogix is automatically putting those baselines together, bringing out these anomalies front and center for you. so you can start to see exactly what's going on. We are going to learn those log sequences. So that could possibly be if there was a production software problem, that will almost always be a change in how those logs are coming in. And so when we look at which logs typically arrive together and in what ratio that they, think of that as like an arrival ratio. If that gets broken, if that's going sideways, we need to know that, because there's definitely something different going on within the systems here. Almost always require some attention. So, trying to think of a good example here, but if maybe a loyalty program, it processes during the night, and if now all of a sudden the logs that typically, it's a very straightforward process, it runs, we see the same thing every single night. Well, one of the components is not working, not sending logs. Well, now that ratio of the logs that we typically see coming from those systems, that's a lot different. Something is that, so that's going to come to the surface immediately. You're going to see that as a flow anomaly. And now, we see that we're not getting those logs from that system. So now one way to tie all this together, and we're going to go ahead, I'm clicking on the tags button across the top there. And here's where you can actually take a look at something that's going on within the system. And actually going to just move over one screen there. And we'll go ahead and click on tags. I didn't have a lot of information in that system, so we'll take a look at this one. Exact same concept that we're looking at. So what we do with tags is think of, hey, at this moment in time, something has happened. We do have full integrations with Jenkins, with Circle CI, other tools, but you could also do this just very simply. Every time you do a release, put a tag out there. Now we can start to say, hey, we're tracking everything, and this is what we're seeing after that exact point in time. And because we're doing this all along the way, you can compare this to previous. So in this case, I clicked on 7.0. I want to compare that with, which one here? Release 6.7, release 6.8. Many times it's that last one that you did that's most important, but oftentimes you'll have a reference version out there as well. And that's the one I want to compare it to. So I can start to see, hey, what's going on with the system right now compared to where we were running. So you get this nice summary across the top here. What are everything's green, so of course it's nice, and a lot of zeros. What was the change in the high severity log ratios? So am I seeing much of a difference there? Any newly introduced errors? So this, think about that one. I put the release, it's gone out. Coralogix will automatically tell me, hey, here's new errors that I haven't seen before. So if you have broken something, I'll see that comes right front and center. And sometimes there's new capabilities in the release, and so I'm getting those simply because of something new that's been added, and that's great. You'll see that, but you want to know about it. So I'm actually seeing a reduction in the error volume here. If that were to spike after a release, I certainly would want to take a look at that. We had a customer who was averaging, I want to say 3.2, 3.3, something like that on the App Store. And simply by using these tags, and now the minute a release went out, they could start tracking this and see, hey, what actually is going on here? When I see something, where in this case, like I've dipped way down, go ahead and view the logs at that point in time. That was 4 hours after the tag started. What happened? Go ahead and dive into that. And, many times I've heard development teams talk about the release going out and then having to deal with the collateral damage. Certainly we want all our releases to be perfect and not have any issues, but many times we the cases that we actually do need to address something. And so, in their case, because they had the information in front of them and they didn't have to wait for anybody to call or for the testers to see if they actually located it, or, worst case, the customer's calling in and saying there's an issue, they were able to have much higher quality releases. And last I spoke to them, they were averaging about a 4.7 on their App Store ratings. Big jump up from the 3.2, 3.3 that they had been seeing. So we're not seeing any change in the alert volume. So maybe this wasn't the best one to choose, but any anomalies in those errors. But the great thing here is really tying all of this together, the new logs that have come into the system. And this one, I put together this custom a couple days ago and must have turned off for the connection errors that I was looking at. The top error template. So again, we talked about that log volume and breaking the logs into the templates, and then which one of those, which is the top one that we're seeing for, and this is actually the only one in this case, because it's 100% of the total errors that are coming through, but this is what we're seeing, and then going straight to those logs. So we talk about really tying everything together within the Coralogix platform. This is what's become so powerful, that I can actually take advantage of that machine learning, take advantage of the alerting that I've put together, take advantage of templatizing the logs, take advantage of the ability to look at the state that has been maintained as the logs are coming into Coralogix. And this is real world. This is something that immediately I can get value out of this. And all I had to do was make the couple of connections over to Jenkins, and all of this started happening automatically for within my Coralogix environment. So, and speaking of integrations, anytime, you can just Google Corelogix Integrations, take you right to our webpage that has everything broken down on here's all the different ways, the different cloud environments, the different log collection tools, different development environments, many different platforms and systems that give you detailed instructions on exactly how to integrate those and begin getting all the value out of Coralogix for those environments. So I'm going to go ahead and we've talked about cost a couple of times. And this is just something I've absolutely never had the capability before, where I know that I only have so many dollars in my budget to spend. And with other solutions that I used, as I needed more information, as I needed, I really need the logs from that system or from this system. My only choice was to, frankly, crank up my license and pay more dollars to now get that other data into the system. So Coralogix lets you really fine tune that spend. Those dollars that you're spending, now you can determine, hey, where exactly do those need to go? Earlier I saw that error come across, and that was very important for those systems, but I had a tremendous amount of just information that was associated with that. You'll see that a lot. Information is critical from that system, but not every single piece of information. So I want to get very granular and say, hey, what is most important as I come into the system here, and where do I put this data? So these actually have different cost tiers associated with them. So think on the high frequent search side, the sub-second responses for my queries. Again, we're in the cloud environment. We have all the compute and storage that we need. This is, as soon as you put in that query, you are going to see the results. But that is the very high, and this is the most expensive option for getting the data, but tremendous capabilities that you have there. Now, if we can avoid the cost, and it's typically SSD storage on those front end web servers in the cloud, we want to actually use something that's less expensive. So the data is going to pass through. We're still going to get all that capability with ingesting the data and analyzing the information as we're ingesting the data. So we see the alerts. We see the anomalies. And now I'm actually going to take, and that's for both of these second two options, I'm just going to pass the data through and send it back to an S3 bucket. That's your S3 bucket. You control it. That you can do really whatever you need to with it there. Now on this medium tier, I still have that searching capability. So everything that we talked about here, and when we looked at those logs and searching through that information, you still have all of that capability in the medium tier. It's going to be a little bit slower. Okay. My experience where we get sub-second responses in the high tier, you may possibly 10 seconds, 20 seconds to actually get the response back because we're reading it back and forth with the S3 bucket as opposed to being on the front end servers there. So, but still all the capabilities there. Now, other times, well, I don't need the data. It's not as critical. I don't need to search it immediately. I have to have a copy of it. Audit is probably the most common. If the auditors are telling you, hey, we need to see that, it needs to be stored, no problem. It absolutely is the lowest cost option. And I bring the data through, place it in the S3 bucket. Now notice that we still have a lot of options there. We still do the anomaly detection on the error spike. We're still parsing out the logs. You do have that live tail capability. This is really, really critical because now this is information when I'm hearing of a situation, when I'm hearing of something that might be of interest, I want to be able to fire up the live tail, do some searching, what's coming across. But once it's passed through there, that's fine. We just keep a copy of it in S3, no problem. I can query directly in that S3 bucket if I need to go get it, or I do have the option to re-index that. Take that data that originally very low, then put a lot of importance on it, go ahead and bring it back into the full index. So now I can, everything that we saw in the last several minutes, searching on that, taking a look at it, whatever we needed to do, you have that capability. So where I see that being used, probably most common, have an important system. It rarely has an issue, but the 1 or 2 times a year when something, there is a hiccup, something has happened, I do want to be able to go back and grab a couple days of logs associated with that system, bring them back in, go ahead and we call it re-index. So now you have that data. I can search on it, figure out exactly what happened, put together a root cause, and make that available to the business and possibly make some adjustments. Maybe I'm noticing a memory leak, or I'm noticing something has happened with that to cause this error, correct the system as needed. So, and you have complete control over this. So as you go through this and you look at those logs, the subsystem, where exactly do I want to put that data? Now I've got all this in Hive, but if you wanted to go and bring it down to one of those less expensive tiers, you control that. So now you do have the ability to fine tune. So use that exact same dollar spend that you've had, but now make adjustments here, possibly move some medium tier data down to just the compliance area to, if there's a new system that's come online for a couple of weeks, I know I need to keep a close eye on it for a while, move that into the frequent search and have all the capabilities that you need, but exactly at the spend that you have available. So I did want to leave a couple of minutes at the end here for any questions that may have come in. I'm not seeing any in the window, but I'll ask the moderators if we've seen any come across in any other fashion. And I appreciate everyone's time today.